All right, so we're going to talk about the algebraic rule in this puzzle, and we're going to talk about it as an explanation. So what should already be in your journal are these notes, but in case they're not, you can pause the video. So again, we are talking about the algebraic rule, and minimize this, maximize that. A couple things you want to keep in mind when we're talking about an algebraic rule is that you should not, for it to be done correctly, you should not need the one before it. So if we had a table and we knew that for 5 months it costs 30, I shouldn't need this to figure out for 6 months. For example, if they asked you for 120 months, if your rule requires you to know the one before it, that means you need the 119th month, right? But then that means you need the one before that and the one before that. So the whole point of the algebraic rule is that we don't need the one before it, that it allows us to calculate it for any number of months. When you write it, it shouldn't be for a specific example, like every time multiply 10 times 10 plus 28. No, that's for the 10th month. If your number of months were 10, but it should be for any number of months. It should be very general. One disadvantage with the algebraic rule is that it doesn't give us the values like for 120 costs this much. It tells you how to get them, and that's why we need the algebraic rule, to be able to look for the pattern, to be able to look for the algebraic rule, what's happening every time, and to be able to write that in a way that makes sense to our peers. Other things to keep in mind are your explanation should be like a how-to. If someone didn't know how to calculate it, it could explain calculate it for any number of months. It should be general. It has to work every time. Has to work every time. It can't just work for the even numbers or numbers 1 through this. And it should involve some math operation, whether it's adding or subtracting, multiplying. And something to keep in mind that people do a lot is that you cannot multiply when you write it. You cannot multiply a number times a word. You can multiply a number times a number. So, for example, you shouldn't say multiplied by months, for example, because months is a word. And like August, September, we're not multiplying 10 times August. We can say number of months, number of weeks, because those are actual numbers, and you can multiply by that. All right, so hopefully I don't get interrupted. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do an example together, and then you will do one on your own. So let me get out this paper and let me show you the example. All right, so the Golden Gate Tollway charges $8 per passage plus a $5 setup fee. So every time you pass the Golden Gate, they charge you $8. They said they would start charging like after the 50-year anniversary, and they haven't stopped since. So we're going to write a rule for this. So I know sometimes it can be helpful to make a table, and that's one of the things I asked you to do in the Go Formative was to first make a table. Oh, Lord. So let's do that. So we'll say for the first time you pass through, if you only pass through it once, they would charge you $8 for passing and $5 setup fee. If you pass through it twice, they charge you $8 for each time plus the $5 passage fee. If you went through it 3 times, they charge you $8 every time plus the $5 setup fee of your account. If you pass for it 4 times, they charge you $8 every time plus the $5 setup fee. So instead of saying, because I know that it's like technically going up by 8, I understand that. But if I say add 8 every time or add 8 to the one before it, then I need the one before it, and that wouldn't make an algebraic rule. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm noticing here I'm doing 8 once. Here I have 2 8s. Here I have 3 8s, and here I have 4 8s. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say I'm multiplying this 8 times this number of months. Because that is algebraic, and I can get any number of months when I say to multiply by the number of months, instead of saying add to the one before it. So what I'm going to write as my rule is multiply 8 guess I should write out the 8 by the number of the months, because that's something I'm always going to have. If they ask me for 120 months, then I'm going to have the number of months. That's why I want to do it this way. I'm going to multiply 8 times the number of months. And so every time, because it's a setup fee, no matter if you pass through it once, twice, 5 times, 4 times, they're always going to make you pay that setup fee. Plus 5. That's my algebraic rule. I don't have to, oh my gosh, I put months. Should be passes, time that you pass through. Because I'm going to have that every single time. So what I'm going to ask you to do next is to write your own rule for a different problem. Let's minimize this, and here is your example. The Fort Worth bike sharing program charges $8 per day, and that is actually a true number. The little bikes, sometimes they have, like they have them on TCU and Trinity Trails, that they charge you $8 per day. So please write an algebraic rule for that.